Good morning. It's Friday, December 11th, 2020, and we have a very, very interesting show. Today we have Peter Arpin on from Arpin International, and we're really looking forward to this show. The topic today is a cut in our armor. And just think about it, with the coronavirus, a challenge that we all face, and so many other things. Sometimes things, I believe, happen for a reason. And several days ago, Peter and I had a discussion on this topic, a cut in our armor. And what I realized during the conversation that Peter brought out was the fact that during times like this, certain parts of us are exposed, so we can look at it, understand it, and also heal from these things. So without further ado, we welcome Peter Arpin to the One Source Network. Welcome, Pete.
Oh, thank you, Greg, and it's good to be back, and it was good to catch up with you in that conversation too.
Pete, that was a very, very interesting conversation. Do you mind sharing with the listeners a bit who you are, and then we can go into the conversation a bit and what you do?
Sure. So in addition to working and being a partner at the Arpin Group, where we are an international relocation company, we think the greenest moving company, we hope, in the world. I also am very involved, as you know, in broadcast, and also on sustainability, on renewables, and have always really loved the challenges of work and running a company and trying to help manage a team, and to help steer a company certainly through difficult times as well.
What's interesting, Pete, we all know that we face a tremendous challenge in relationship to the coronavirus, but once again, a cut in our armor. How did you find that article, or I don't know if it was a video?
It was actually listening to a speaker, and yeah, it was really interesting to me because he really started the conversation by saying that at a time like this, we're so quick to blame other forces, other outside interests or people, so that the ill effects that we might be feeling, even some of the stress and so forth, we might want to say, hey, geez, the Chinese unleashed this, and we weren't prepared, and the government's not doing enough, the healthcare system's not doing enough. And his point was, in any period of time where it goes from good to bad, and there's a lot of that stress and related heavy lifting that we've got to do. It's really just us showing the cracks in our armor that we just haven't dealt with and we haven't had to deal with. So if we haven't had really good practices, if we haven't prepared ourselves both physically and emotionally and spiritually through diet and exercise, through meditation, through being mentally disciplined, through education, whatever the case might be, as that starts to pour on, and it's been a difficult year in terms of not only COVID, right, but we've had the divide within our country, and certainly a divide in the world, that the things we have not done well are going to manifest, and we're going to see the impact, and we should accept responsibility. Not that we're not in difficult situations, not that the world hasn't turned ugly in a way, but we've got to take responsibility because we've been told, right, these things are going to come and happen. I just found it a fascinating perspective.
Hey, Pete, I also agree with that, because the more I look at the situation that we face with the virus, and like you said, there was a lot of divide in our country, and still is. it allows the individual to really see how much power either they're giving away or the power that they really have within themselves. Well, when you shared it with me, it showed me the areas that I needed work on. You know, if I was needy in one area, these things really make them more visible, those emotional needs.
They do, Greg. As you point out, I think it's a time of introspection. It's a time because as you said, we don't want to be dependent on others or on the government for our well-being. So how do we do the basic day-to-day grunt work to make sure that doesn't happen? And again, we can prepare ourselves. And I related to a company. We have to go through the same thing too. These fundamental things that we do every day are the best practice, kind of being the best version of ourselves. And so we know things are going to go wrong, both as an individual and as a company. For a company, we know others are going to go out of business and owe us money, or people are going to leave us, or we're going to lose a big customer, or there's going to be an economic collapse, or the banks all of a sudden don't want to, finance, whatever the case might be. And so, as you point out, to do the things that we need to do to be as independent as possible gets us prepared for all of those moments.
Now, Pete, what's interesting, you mentioned your company, and it's a large company. During the process of when the coronavirus started to manifest, like you said, what was some of the impact that you had to face, and what was your attitude when you were facing them?
Well, it's significant for us, Greg. Being an international mover, our business started to collapse right away because, as you can imagine, families and people, they just can't transfer. They can't visit other countries to find a home. They can't get the work permits. Their companies now aren't going to transfer them as planned. So we right away just got slammed. We could see our business cut in half right away. And so at first we're thinking, wow, this is going to be an absolute disaster this year. Like, this is survival time. So very quickly we started to reshape the company. We started to cut where we could cut and preserve cash, obviously focus on the business we did have going to make sure it went well, looking at overhead and just starting to reshape the company very quickly. Now, it ended up, ironically, after all of this, to be a good year, and we're very fortunate because we have a lot of diversity. So one of the segments of business with government agencies continue, because with the government they can get work permits and they can continue to flow. But it was looking like an absolute disaster. But having said that, prior years were good. We all know that the economy's been good. And so we were very careful, Greg, to not take on a lot of debt, not to overexpand, to try to reserve cash, to get prepared. Because, we're fifth generation. We go back 120 years. We've gone through all of this, right? Think about it: famines and disease and economic collapses, depressions, you name it. We've been through it. One thing we are good at, honestly, is resilience, and that's just making sure that we're always trying to prepare for those moments.
Wow, Pete, that's very interesting. And when you look at it, as we look at companies are really run by individuals, and the healthier we are, the more that company can survive.
Well, that's a great point. It's so funny because people always say, well, there's no real heart and soul to a company, right? It's just bricks and mortar. No, the people are the heart and soul of a company. And you'll see it in the culture and attitude, in even the way that a company as a whole will treat outside vendors and suppliers and customers. And absolutely, Greg, that team, if that team is not solid, and that's why we've always placed an emphasis on health with our employees. We've got the gym, and we've got all the incentives, and we've had forever to quit smoking and do those things, because absolutely we are completely intertwined, and we are dependent on each other as a family, right? Wouldn't you think of your business not much different as your family, right? It is a family. It's an extended family.
I think you're absolutely right, because look at the time and the energy spent at your business, Pete. I mean, that's something that's being nurtured, so it has a spirit. In my opinion, that spirit is a huge part of that company.
It is, and I think, as you said, there's a lot of time dedicated. You get to know each other well. So companies are always thinking about what is the relationship? Is this person a good fit? Again, how do we embellish a positive culture? And it really comes from that dedication to not only outside forces and like customers, but inside to each other. We do a monthly, sometimes twice a month update called the Mind Pump, and we're always trying to find the best outside video, motivational videos, and it all comes down to, geez, we really got to think about how we're perceived internally and how we treat each other internally as much as externally.
Well, that's interesting, and again, related to the topic, a cut in our armor. Pete, what if there's someone out there who's listening and who has to make certain changes, but for whatever reason, they're so comfortable and too afraid to make changes? Could you share with them what it takes to move past those personal fears?
Well, that's a great question, and for all of us, I guess it's an individual thing. As me, as a person, and us as a company, we've always embraced change, because change is the one constant in life. So you can't deny it, you can't sweep it under the rug. That evolution of us as human beings in relationship to our environment and relationship to each other is the only constant in life. And so I think there has to be really an enthusiasm. It's funny, I was listening to something the other day, Greg, and they were talking about great athletes in big moments. They'll be asked, were you nervous? They'll say, I wasn't nervous, I was excited. And the physical reaction to being nervous and excited is the same. It's your elevation of heart rate and things like that. So if there's an attitude of enthusiasm around change, so if you and I see a mountain and we know there's going to be different paths and a lot of different terrain and weather conditions, if I can see the top and know that whatever's there is going to be worth that struggle, but all you see are the obstacles in the way, there's no enthusiasm. So I think there's got to be an enthusiasm for change, because we're built for adaptation. The world, ourselves, we shouldn't fear, because we are built for adaptation. But I think we forget that, and that would be my only possible suggestion. It's just a mindset, right? A little twist in attitude that says, yeah, change is coming, and I'm enthusiastic, because maybe sometimes we think that change is going to be bad, when hopefully most of the time it's good.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those who are just tuning in, you're here today with Peter Arpin from Arpin International, and today's topic, a cut in our armor. So Pete, you mentioned change, and it really comes down to the individual, but can it be taught? Like you said, it's attitude. Is this something that everyone can learn, or are people in general wired differently?
That's a great question, Greg. Yes, the people are wired much differently and in more difficult situations, right? So there's there's a range, and there's a range of emotions. Certainly, our experiences precast some of these things, but I think it is a talent, and not much different than any talent we have to develop. So good listening, being a little more optimistic, strengthening our bodies, nutrition. I would think, despite those differences in people, I would think anyone could cultivate a better attitude and ability to change. That's just my opinion, and I don't think, I'm 63, and I'm better at it now than I was in my 20s and 30s. So I don't think age has anything to do with it.
What's interesting, Pete, as you're sharing some of the knowledge in your personal experience, in my mind, I'm going back to the time that represented the challenge that I had, that I could sort of compare it to the time we're in related to the coronavirus. And that time was the time I was in a depression. And as I looked at it, I reached a place that the only way I could get out of my depression wasn't me alone. I had to ask for help. So what I finally did, I had to reach a place what I call surrendering. And I really started to ask certain questions. One of the questions was, who am I really? So I had to reach out to the God that I didn't have a relationship with at the time. In your experience, do you think God is a key for us to have a different type of attitude so we face some of these problems with hope?
Oh, no doubt. I think, Greg, more than ever, people need faith. I see a big divide right now between people, and I'm very active in the faith community, who have that. So they've already been humbled in so many ways. If nothing else, Corona is a humbling experience. It reminds us that we're vulnerable to so many things. We can only control a tiny, tiny part of our lives, but that faith that there's divinity and that working in conjunction with God, we will get through it. We're going to have to be patient. We may need to adjust a lot of things. We're definitely going to get humbled, but I feel bad for folks, honestly, right now that don't have faith, that just are depending on themselves, because as human beings, it's tough to be adequate to respond. Like, we see such depression right now and mental health issues, yet in retrospect, historically, we've seen a lot worse than this so many times. There was a speaker from India, and he was saying, listen, if you look at where we are today in terms of the economy as an example, and being able to work and finding a quality of life, we're back maybe 5 years ago. Well, 5 years ago wasn't so bad. Why is this so dramatic? Why are we not able to push through this? Why are we giving up? Why is there so much depression? Yeah, I understand. You're going through some tough times. Some people have lost their jobs, their income. They're on the verge potentially of losing a place to live. There's no doubt about it. But these conditions have existed, and much worse, forever. And so, what's the secret, right? What's the ability to get through that and get to the other side? There's no doubt divinity plays a key role, and it goes back to what you and I said too, right? So much of it is attitude. If I sit here and you and I are going through the same tumultuous change, and I can kind of look to the other side and know that I can get there and I can make those good decisions and adjustments, and I'm going to have to be a little bit patient and endure, I'm probably going to get through it better than you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I do. I feel bad for folks that don't have that foundation where they have experienced God, have a relationship, and can use that as a very mighty crutch. And always ask those questions, right? Well, what is this? What am I going to learn? What will this teach me? How do I get better through this? And how do I, at the end of the day, understand myself better as well?
Hey, Pete, you just brought out a great point. I think when we're in challenges, it's really how we speak to ourselves, I think, first of all. But I think as a society, one of the challenges that may have been lost was the ability to ask questions. Because when you ask the question, there's something in us that has the solution. But if we don't ask questions and we're always, looking outside of ourselves for someone else to fix us, it makes that part of us void. We don't exercise the ability to trust that place in us that God put that wisdom on how to face hard times and how to get through those hard times. So when you started asking certain questions just now, it sparked something in my brain so I can be able to start searching for those answers.
Well, and there's a really good business expert, Greg, and he'll walk into a room and there's 100 people or 1,000 people or 10,000 people, and he'll ask the question, who in this room is a leader? And inevitably 5, 10, 20% of the folks will raise their hand. And she'll always say, really? Well, guess what? Every one of you in this room are a leader. And guess what? You're in charge of yourself. You're the leader of your life, not somebody else, not the person next to you, not the person in the back of the room. If you're not raising your hand, you're not all that you can be and should be. You are a leader. And the most important thing you're doing is leading your life. And as you said, then you're not subject to all the outside influences.
That's a great point, Pete. And once again, today's topic, I'm here with Peter Arpin from Arpin International. And the topic today is the cuts in our armor. And what's interesting, Pete, once again, it's how everything does come on the individual. We get out of our situations not because of luck. Sometimes, and most of the time, it's our connection with God and the choices that we make. Hey, Pete, how important is choices? How important is to make conscious decisions?
Well, you and I had talked previously about somebody I really like, a book, and the book was all about being the best version of yourself. And the only way to do that was every day you had to make good choices. You need best practice. It was all about habits, good habits, good habits, good habits. If you tell me your habits, I'll tell you where you will be in a year. And I think that, Greg, that gets to the heart of what you're asking, right? It's not always big choices. It's little choices, little everyday choices. And one of the things I heard the other day, somebody was saying, listen, you have to empty your bucket at night. So when you wake up in the morning, you have a fresh start. You're not carrying all the sludge and all the crap over. Empty your bucket. Wake up. It's a new slate, but you have to have action. It's like faith, right? What do they always talk about in faith, Greg? You can sit in church. If you walk out of church and you don't implement it in your life, you don't smile, you don't help somebody, you have no faith. You're empty. You're an empty suit. So get up and with good habits, build to the best of your ability a good day. Sure, there's going to be bad days despite all your best efforts, but those choices, Greg, are choices as to attitude, who you hang out with, what you eat, how much sleep you get, do you drink, and how do you see the day? Is it a blank slate full of opportunity, or are you full of pessimism? Yeah, those choices are everything.
And once again, Pete, as I'm listening to you, I noticed the times that I was feeling very hopeless. When I look at it now, I'm looking at the part where I realized how important it is to maintain a energy level, because sometimes when we're very, very depleted, it's very hard to think positive, because then we're consumed with thoughts that may not represent good thinking, and also our ability to make good choices without feeling good about ourselves sometimes, or having enough energy to make good decisions. It gets interrupted. So in your experience, how important is health and maintaining a good attitude, and also watching your energy level?
I think it's everything, Greg. Now, some of this, assumes that somebody doesn't have, right, a chemical imbalance, something that needs something else to deal with, right? But generally, in terms of being able to attack the day with a positive attitude, I think your body, your health, your nutrition, they talk about the gut being a second brain. Like, one of the things I try to do is work out every single day without fail. Even though it takes some discipline, I don't always want to do it. I know from a mental clarity, from a energy, as you said, my body, I just don't feel as good, right? And you think about all the chemicals that get released when you do that. I absolutely, I don't think you can separate it out. I think you have to have those good habits every day around your physical health that will clearly change some of the chemical reactions and I was reading something the other day where it was talking about how the brain can heal. The science today is the brain can heal. We used to think it couldn't. And they've showed it with patients with MS and all sorts of things. And what they talk about is the kind of the neurons, and how with your brain, you have to be sending out, not trying to receive, which can be negative from your body, but your brain has to reverse that and send out these positive neurons, because that's where some of the health, but you've got to take care of your body so it can receive those and respond. The science today is unbelievable about the things we can do with our body and our mind to put ourselves in a very good position to succeed, despite Parkinson's disease. Greg, there's cases where there's one guy, he walks 5 miles a day. This reporter who wrote the book could hardly keep up, and he should be in a wheelchair by now. How do you explain that?
Wow, that's incredible. The human will. Pete, what I'm looking at, in this time of challenge, I think what I'm realizing as an individual, it's really how much I really want to live and grow. I mean, when you really look at our lives, God granted us the ability to think and to make choices and to put Him first. But it's overall is, do I feel purposeful? Hey, Pete, we have, it's 8:30. Do you have like 10 minutes left? Or
Sure.
Is that any problem?
No. Go ahead, Greg. Absolutely.
So, Pete, we'll leave off with this. Maybe you can just begin to close on being purposeful. I'm scattered in my thoughts because I'm sort of relating the question to the times in my life when I wasn't purposeful. How important is it to have a purpose, Pete?
Well, so I think you've asked something, right, that we've got to ask ourselves each day, because and we've got somebody here, a guy going through a really difficult challenge. His dad is in a nursing home, and he can't see him physically, and he feels isolated. All good reasons why he is struggling. But if you sit in a room with him and you ask, what are your goals? Like, what do you want to be different? Like, tell me that, and then we can talk about how you might be able to get there. Well, you can't really articulate those. And I always say, well, if you don't know what road you want to go down, even on a daily basis, well, then what direction will you go in? I think, Greg, every day we have to have some goals, some discernible goals. And again, it's all around being the best version of ourselves. And those goals will change every day. Right now it might be getting through holidays. Other times it might be a better relationship with the kids. Other times more faithful. Other times more exercise. Other times more productive at work. But purposeful is absolutely, we're designed by God, right? To have gifts, to have a mission, to be granted that opportunity to fulfill that mission. And the more we understand it, and the more we're in tune with it, and the more we're motivated by it, I'm a big believer, Greg. Every day there's got to be, and every month and every year. And I don't mean, we're coming up soon on a new year, and you're going to set this and that. I'm talking about daily, and then you adjust, and you feel good about the progress you have made. Because if not, you are stuck. You know what I mean? Really, what road will you take yourself down without those milestones? I don't know.
Wow. Hey, Pete, once again, you mentioned a few moments ago, you asked the individual certain questions about, if he had goals, and if so, what type of goals does he have? But once again, I went back in the time period that I felt that depression, and I'm sitting in that chair and I'm picturing you asking me those questions. Do you know, Pete, that those questions wouldn't be effective at all? Do you know why? And it just hit me.
Why?
Hey, Pete, what I realized at my deepest part of my depression, my challenge was I couldn't feel any love. So without
for
love,
yourself included,
first and foremost. So what I realized, if I didn't feel any love, those goals, those questions had no impact, because my foundation that really drives my life to make me feel alive and purposeful, I'm not attached to it anymore. It's almost like a total disconnect.
But I would say this, Greg, and I understand what you're saying, but if you're sitting there and you're not feeling love, it doesn't just come sit on your lap.
Oh, no.
You gotta go find, you've gotta manifest it, you gotta make it, whether it's love for yourself or love for a person or love for a church or it won't just come visit you.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
There's got to be some action to have a reaction, like success, right? Any of these things, they don't just come sit on your lap or find you, Greg. It's in our action that we find those things.
Hey, Pete, you hit it, because to me, love is a verb. It's action-oriented. You're absolutely right. So, hey, Pete, I really think with everything we discussed today,
I just think, Greg, if somebody is sitting in your situation today, right, in that chair, feeling empty, there still has to be motion from them, action from them. There's just no way around it, and every single one will have satisfaction. Any little action, and it will release those chemicals, right, and create enthusiasm instead of fear in our hearts and minds. But as tough as it might get, as strapped into that chair as they may feel, it takes action, and we're designed for that.
Yes. So Pete, for me, and then I would like for you to close, but I remember the time you and I, this probably was about maybe 9 or 10 years ago. I was going through my depression, and you invited me for a coffee at Dunkin' Donuts. I don't know if you remember this.
I do.
And yeah, and one of the things you told me that always, it was a big one. Don't take your failures personal. Don't let people, affect you the way that you feel about yourself. And I look at this situation that we face now, we can't let it be personal, really. We have to know that it's a situation that we experience, the coronavirus, but there's hope, and like you said, it's hope, purpose, knowing who we are, and so many other things. So right now, Pete, I would like for you, if anything's on your heart, to please share in this closing of today's show, A Cut in Our Armor.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me back. It's always great to talk with your audience, to listen to you, to share experiences. For me, Greg, my dad, I told you, taught me a long time ago, it's perseverance. It's ultimately getting up. You only have to win 51% of the time. You can lose plenty of times. You can fall down, you can collapse, and for men in particular, right, our egos always get in the way.
Mm-hmm.
We blame ourselves, we blame somebody else, we take criticism poorly. Warren Buffett always said, I like criticism. I like people to disagree with me. Now, there's a guy worth $70 billion, right, who doesn't have to really listen to anybody else. He says, I like it. I like it. It makes me better. I would say Corona is going to threaten everybody, right, everywhere in the world. But we wake up every day, you and I, facing death. Every day. Without question. From all sorts of infections and disease and poor lifestyle, and more people, as you know, die from heart attacks, heart problems, than anything else. And I think second might be cancer now. So I think for any of us, it's just a matter of always recognizing that we can use fear in a really good way. We should be humble. We should be fearful. Yeah, there's going to be all sorts of things that can hurt us, but it's in our preparation, it's in our mental attitude, it's in our will, it's in our, certainly what you pointed out, reliance on God and others. And the thing that I have learned through all of this, Greg, is we need to get back to the fundamentals. We need strong families. We need strong parents. We need strong communities. We need to, I always say, if you want to get out of a funk, go do something for somebody else. Honestly, stop thinking about yourself. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Get off your butt and go do something for somebody else, and you'll feel better than you have in months. We have really got to get back to the fundamentals of what made us great, and it's our country. In God we trust, right? The more we push God out of this country, the less that we can be great. Because at the end of the day, as you know, He will lift you up. He will make you greater than you can be on your own. He will fill you with the love that you're talking about. But I just think we've got to get back, because if we have strong families, if we have those relationships, if we're not feeling isolated, if we're feeling part of a community, if we give a crap about other people, we'll be fine. Mm-hmm. We'll be fine.
Well, Pete, that was a great piece to reflect on. And once again, we're very thankful for having you on. Pete, the more that I hear you speak, the more that I believe your purpose is absolutely, one of them anyways, is broadcasting. Because the information and knowledge that you share with the listener is from your experience and from your heart. And that's what's needed instead of broadcasting a lot of negativity, such as certain media networks. People need to be edified and lifted. So once again,
and amen to that, Greg. And I will tell you, as you know, I'm not an expert. As you said, it's just sharing experiences together, right? That's simple.
And Pete, that's what I'm saying. You have many, and I believe this is the time that God is positioning you to open up, because people now, I think, Pete, with everything going on, it causes more of a opening for people to investigate maybe new ideas or new beliefs. So the timing, I believe, is perfect, Pete.
Well, I appreciate that. And as you said, it's all about sharing experiences and best practice. I learn from you, you learn from me every day, right?
That's right.
Every day.
Well, again, Pete, I went over a little time, but I thought the things you were sharing were very important. So
Thank you.
We thank you here at the One Source Network. And would you come back in the near future, Pete?
Any time. And God bless you and your work. We really need it. We appreciate it. As you said, we need good media right now, Greg. We're getting hammered with all sorts of negative things, and there's so many good things. I could tell you a countless thousand million stories of people doing incredible work, and that is those are the moments the things that we need to think about and mimic in our lives.
Hey, Pete, real quick, I can see a big Arpin Media Network right from your headquarters in 95 is very close to highway.
Yeah. We'll certainly need you here then.
Yeah. Well,
and Rebecca.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thank you for your time, Pete.
Alrighty, have a great weekend. Thank you.
You too.
Bye.
He's good, hon.